Okay, so on this first question, 75% of what number is 90? How do we do that? Well, there's a couple of ways that you might have learned a way where you do is and of, and you do like a fraction and with 100 involved. You could do that. You could totally do that. But I've found over the years, it's easier for students to just take the sentence very, very directly. And so that's what I'm going to do. So what do I mean take the sentence very, very directly? I mean 75%. You know how to change that into a decimal, right? 0.75. And so let me write, so let me write a couple of steps up here. Number one, oh, well, you know that. And then of, what is of always? In a word problem, of is multiply, isn't it? Remember that of is multiply. So 75% of, that means times, or I'll just go dot. What number? That's your x, right? Because we don't know what it is. Is, that's equals, isn't it? Is equals. In fact, let me, I'm not having enough room. Let me do this a little cleaner. So 75%, again, that's 0.75 of, that's times, what number, that's x, is, that's equals, and then 90. See how I just directly brought down the numbers and the words, and it formed an equation. Let me bring it over here. I'll bring it right over here. So it's 0.75 times x. You put that dot in there if you want. You don't have to. Equals 90, right? Everybody tracking with me? So I just took those words and I let them directly become an equation. 0.75 times x, because of is always multiply. Remember that of in word problems is always multiply. 75% of what number is 0.75 times x, because what number, that's something we don't know. So that's just x. Is equals 90. All right, and you know what x wants? X said, I want to be alone. I want to be alone. Get rid of that 0.75. So how do we get rid of that 0.75? Do I subtract it? No. It's multiplied, so I divide it, and you know that quite well. Divide by 0.75 on both sides. Boom and a boom. Hit the buttons on your calculator. And I'm getting 120. And that's the answer to that one. So they said 75% of what number is 90? 75% of 120 is 90. Hey, by the way, that makes sense, doesn't it? It's always good to double check if the numbers make sense. Remember, if I said I ate 75% of the candy bar, I always use candy bars. That means most of the candy bar, right? 3/4 of the candy bar. Or 75% of the football game is over. It means we're at the end of the third quarter, right? So 75%, like most of what number is 90? Well, most of 120. Maybe it said there's 120 minutes, 2 hours to take this exam. 75% of the 120 minutes, most of the 120 minutes is 90. Yeah, that seems reasonable, doesn't it? Seems like it's in the ballpark of reasonableness. You know what I mean? Like, well, what if I got an answer like 30? That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? This is what I've seen over the years. Students will accidentally hit a wrong button and they'll get an answer like 30. And I'll say, wait a minute, that can't be, can it? 75%, like most of 30 is 90? No, 90 is all of 30 and way more. It's not just 75% of 30. That'd be a crazy answer. No way in the world. The answer has to be bigger than 90, doesn't it? Because 75% of this bigger number is 90. So it makes sense. 120 seems reasonable. All right, let's try another one. Let's try this next part. I'm going to do the same thing. Let me kind of section it off for us. There we go. All right, so question number 2 now. I'm going to do the same thing. So what number, that's my x, is, that's my equals, 25%, change that to a decimal, 0.25, of is times 220, or you could put parentheses. You can indicate times however you want, with parentheses or a dot or whatever. Does that make sense? I just directly translated those words. What number, X, right? The what number is always the X, is we don't know what it is equals 25%, 0.25 of times 220. Okay. So then, so notice X, I'll bring it over here. Here, it would be helpful. 0.25 times 2. And notice X is already alone, because normally we're like, hey, X is yelling out, I want to be alone, get X alone. It's already alone. It's already alone, isn't it? So just multiply these on your calculator. Use your calculator. I'm assuming, I think it's 55, isn't it? Double check. Yeah, 55. So there it is. Notice we didn't have to like divide both sides or anything like that. X was already alone. X is 55. Is that a reasonable answer? 55, remember the what number is the X is 55 now. 55 is 25%, that's like a quarter of 220. Yeah, 55 is a small part of 220. That seems reasonable, doesn't it? Okay, let's try one more. Okay, so now on this one, again, I'm going to do direct translation of the words. 2.1, okay, that's just 2.1 is, that's equals. Now 1.5%, remember the percent symbol has 2 zeros in it, doesn't it? Right, these like 2 zeros. And what are they telling us? Move the decimal 2 places back, right? So 1, and you're to the edge of the number. 2, and you're beyond it, you bring in a 0, don't you? So it becomes 0.015. Are you good with that? So whenever you change a percentage to a decimal, you remove the percent symbol, right? And you move the decimal 2 places back, 0.015.
Will we ever put it 2 places to the right or no?
When you put a percent symbol on, when you change to a percentage. So it's one way or the other. Put it on or put it off. We'll see other examples of that later.
Okay.
And I'll mention it at the time. Of, that's times, what number? X. How are we doing? You see how that's direct translation? 2.1 is equals, change 1.5% to a decimal, move it 2 places back, 0.015. Of, remember of is times, what number? X. So let me bring that over here. We got our equation. See how nice and easy it is to get these equations? Whoops, I just wrote the wrong equation. I can't talk and write. 2.1 equals 0.015x. Okay, there's our equation. And now X is on the right side this time, but whatever, that's fine. X is yelling out what he's always yelling out. I want to be alone, right? So say, okay, divide by the 0.015 to get X alone. Hit the buttons on your calculator. And I'm getting 140. So X is 140. Is that answer reasonable? Let's go back to what number now is the 140. That's the X. That's what we just solved for, the 140. Does that seem reasonable? Let's read it. 2.1, that's a small number, is 1.5%. That's a very small part of 140. Yeah, 2.1 is a very small part of 140. That seems reasonable. If I got an answer like, 3, that'd be crazy. 2.1 is a super small part of 3? No, he's more than half of 3. That couldn't be right. But yeah, a number like 140, he's a very small part. 2.1 is a very small part of 140. That answer seems reasonable. So there we go. So all these ones where they just give you a percentage and they say of what number, just directly translate the words into an equation, English to math straight away, and then solve for X. That's all you got to do. And remember, of is multiply, is equals, and change your percentages to decimals by moving the decimal back 2 places. There we go.